Hey everyone, I'm Vikas from SmallAcademy and welcome to another part of our joke app development tutorial series. And in the last part, we created this recycler view, we highlighted the selected position of our recycler view items and so on. Now in this video, we are going to write some code to add or load different fragment here based on this item is selected. So what I want to do is, actually, we are only going to have one fragment, okay? So this is the main fragment, but this fragment is going to receive different URL. So let me go to the joke API here and let me select the any category and make note of this URL here. It's going to change based on the item that we have selected here, okay? So right now it is having v2.joke.api.dev/joke.any, okay? Because it's going to fetch the any jokes from any category, okay? Now, as soon as I select on custom and select any of this program, any of this category, it's going to change, okay? So if I deselect this and go to miscellaneous, it's going to select the miscellaneous. If I deselect this and go to here, dark, and it's going to select dark. I can also select multiple categories, but I'm not going to implement that function in our application. We are just going to let the user select one category at a time, okay? So you can see pun, I don't know how to pronounce this word, pun, and you can see it is having different URL here, okay? So the idea here is every time when we user click on different categories, we are going to send that different URL to this fragment and we're going to load the data from that URL, okay? So I know it might be confusing to you, but don't worry, it will be crystal clear when we implement this in our application. So right now the problem here we have is how we can send the different data whenever user click on this item here, okay? So let's go ahead and fix that thing first. So in our on click in the adapter position, what I want to do is I want to check which item is clicked. So I'm going to manually identify which position, which category is clicked, and based on that I'm going to send the URL to our fragment. So if category, that is cats, is the list that we have, and I'm going to get the value of that category based on the selected position. So we have this position of card and I'm going to check if that is equals to any, okay? So this is the name of category that we have. So I'm going to check that manually here. So if any of you guys have different idea, then let me know and I may make update video on that. But right now this is the idea that I have come up with. So I'm going to toast sample message here. So v.get context, and similarly I'm going to perform this several times for all the categories. It's selected. Let's go ahead and do that few more times, and I'm going to copy the name from here. Okay, now let me go ahead and run this application and I hope that it's going to work. Okay, so I'm going to click on any category. It is saying any category is selected. Now programming, it says programming is selected, miscellaneous, dark, and so on. Okay, so it's working perfectly. Now our job is to load the fragment whenever any of this category is selected, okay? So let me go here and get this URL. So this is our base URL, okay? And these categories are changing every time we are selecting different categories, right? So this is the base URL. So what I want to do is I want to make one default string for the base URL. So let me go here into the values and create URL and paste our URL here like that, okay? And in our fragment we are using this, so I'm going to change this to hello, okay, so that we will not get any error. Now we have this URL. I can reference this URL in this category adapter here, okay? So here what I want to do is I want to start our fragment whenever any of our button is clicked in the recycler view items. Okay, so whenever this miscellaneous is clicked, I want to start the fragment with the jokes from this miscellaneous character, from the dark character, from the pawn character, every time the button is clicked here. Okay, so to start a new fragment, we already know the code. So we already have the code here. So this is the code. So I'm gonna go here and add the code here. Okay, now we cannot access this fragment manager from this category adapter class. So we need to create the instance of Appcompat activity here. So I'm going to do that, Appcompat activity, and from the v we can get the context. Okay, and now we need to cast that. So let me cast that. Now using this activity we can get this fragment support manager. Okay, now that error is resolved. Okay, now what I want to do is I want this fragment to be able to receive the URL whenever we try to load this fragment. Okay, so to be able to make this fragment receive any URL, we can create the constructor here and make that constructor receive the URL. So first of all, I'm going to create one more variable here, that is string variable, and joke API URL. Okay, and now I will make the public constructor here, and I'm going to give the main, and it's going to receive the string of URL. And right now this dot joke API URL is going to assign to this URL. Okay, now it says it is having two related problems, and that is here in the main activity, because we are calling this main. Now this main class expect the argument, so here we need to pass the joke API URL. So by default it's going to open the any category. Okay, so by default when we open this application, it's going to load the jokes from the any category. So that's why I'm going to state this URL here. Okay, this any URL. So let me copy this and go back here and paste it here. Okay, but if you remember, we have this string here with this base URL, so we can eliminate this part. Okay, and we can call that string. So get resources dot get string, and inside this I'm going to call r.string dot URL. Okay, so let me show you. Now we are calling this main fragment, and in the main fragment, while calling this main fragment, while creating the instance of this main fragment, we are passing the API URL. So similarly we are going to do the same thing here when we call this URL. Okay, so here it also expects the URL. So I'm going to go here and copy this same thing like that, and I cannot use this get resources directly, so I can use v.get context, or I can actually reference it using the activity. So activity.get resources, and it's going to work fine. Okay, now we need to repeat this multiple times. Okay, so here we need to repeat this code multiple times, but it's not good practice to repeat all the code multiple times. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one method to load the fragment. Okay, so come back here just after this, public void, I'm going to load the fragment, and this fragment is going to receive the activity. Okay, activity and the and the fragment. Okay, the fragment that we want to load, like that. Okay, so this is the activity. We need this activity and the fragment. So let me copy this code from here. Okay, actually we don't need this activity right now, so let me actually remove that, because the activity comes with the Appcompat activity here. Okay, but we need this v for the context, so I'm going to pass that view from here. like that. Now instead of calling this main directly, we will pass the fragment. Okay, and we are receiving this fragment while calling this load fragment. Okay, so now we can call this load fragment from this if else condition here. So load fragment, and it's going to get the B, and we need to pass the fragment. So new main, and inside this we are going to get the resources, get string r.string.url. okay, and we'll pass our category name any, actually not here, after that. Okay, like this we can load our fragment. Okay, and now we'll copy the same thing here multiple times. But before doing that, let me show you one more thing. Since we are loading 10 jokes at a time, because it allows us to load 10 jokes at a time, so we will send the request for 10 jokes. Okay, like this. So every time when user click on any of this category here, it's going to load the 10 jokes from that particular category. So to do load the 10 jokes, we need to add this parameter here. So I'm going to copy this, go back to Android Studio, and add that here, so that we'll get 10 jokes every time when we call this fragment. Okay, and we'll do that same here in the main activity. And now we are going to copy this load fragment in all these if condition here. Okay, and we will change the categories. So this is how we send the different URL every time when we load the fragment. Now let's go to the main activity here and check if we are receiving the correct URL or not. So I'm going to create one log here. Okay, and I'm going to fix this. Let me add this inside the code, and I'm going to press Ctrl-Alt-C, and it's going to create the constant for us. Okay, now in the main, I'm going to load the URL that we have received. So that is joke API URL, and we are receiving that from the category adapter here. Okay, so this is the URL. Now let me run this and show you guys if we are getting that URL every time when we click this category here. Okay, so you can see by default we are receiving this any URL. Now let's see what happens if I click on programming. See, we are getting this programming URL. If I click on miscellaneous, we are getting this one. If I click on dark, we are getting another URL, and so on. Now in this fragment, we can use Volley library to get the JSON response and parse that JSON response and display that jokes in our view here. Okay, so we will do that in the next video.